This is Gene Staley, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 506, originally aired April 7th, 2021. Hey everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you get a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. Today's podcast is a little bit different than what we normally do. Over the weekend, my friend and colleague, Alan Davidson, passed away. And Alan was larger than life. He was a large man. He towered over me, and I am 6'1". And what was bigger than him was his spirit, was his energy, and his joy. I actually have an interview that I did with Alan a number of months ago that has been sitting in the can that I'm going to share with you next week. But in the meantime, one of the things that has been very heartening as the word of Alan's death has been circulating around on social media was the way that the transformational and tapping community has been rallying around each other and helping to process and work through grief. My friend Chris Ferraro, in the masterclass on grief as part of the Tapping Success Academy, said it really, really succinctly when she said, grief will not be contained. Grief will not be micromanaged. Grief is running the show. So if you are present to the grief will tell you exactly what it needs to be resolved. And grief is a really different issue than all of the other issues. I can tap and reduce frustration. I can tap and reduce sadness. Grief, tapping is very powerful in you helping us to move through it, but it is exactly that. It is something that we need to process and we need to move through. And grief is not just about the big things. Loss of jobs, the dissolving of a marriage, the death of a loved one. Grief shows up in big and small ways. Anytime we lose out, we miss something, an opportunity, an experience, some time, grief shows up. And because of the nature of the world over the course of the last 18 months or so, there has been so many things that have been missed and lost. And so I would be willing to bet, even if you are not aware of it, you are carrying some grief around that needs to be processed. And so instead of creating a new resource for you on grief, what I want to do instead is I want to point you to and highlight the resources that are already on the website for grief. There are actually 6 previous podcast episodes on grief. Episode 363 and episode 188 are interviews with people who are grief experts. And then episodes 275, 204, 244, and 254 are all tap-along audios to help you to move through unexpected emotions and to move through grief. The links to all 6 of these episodes can be found in the show notes. So as you are listening to this inside of your podcast app, if you scroll over to the show notes area, you will see that there's actually active links right inside of the show notes. And so if you click on those links, it will take you directly to a place that you can go and you can listen to those episodes. If you happen to be listening to this right now in the website, if you see right above the player, you will see a list of all of the tools that will help you to process and work your way through grief. As you are dealing with grief, know that you are not alone, that there are other people in the world who want to connect and share and help you walk with and process through that emotion that needs to be processed through. If you know someone in your life who could use these resources right now, please be our ambassador and pass it along. Grief is sometimes a really difficult emotion to talk about. 1, because it can be embarrassing, and 2, we might not have the vocabulary to know how to talk about that particular thing. And so this might make a huge difference in someone's life you know. Just opening a door, giving them the opportunity to think about, express, and process through that sense of grief. If you have questions or comments about grief or anything else, I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. And make sure that you are following or subscribed to the podcast. In podcasting parlance, subscribe is always free. You can find the show everywhere you find audio. Just search for Tapping Q&A. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible. Again, anywhere you find audio, just search Tapping Q&A. Follow, subscribe, turn on the notifications. You're certainly going to want to come back next week for just a really breathtaking and wonderful conversation with my friend Alan Davidson. For the Tapping Q&A podcast is G. Staley. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Staley Tapping Q&A. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Staley and Tapping Q&A.